Hello and welcome to all! An old retired couple who narrowly escapes drowning, a huge dam that breaks under its own weight and causes a monstrous flood, or pipes and sewers that explode and risk splashing you. Here are the 10 most unusual and mind-boggling water sequences that you will ever see. Cyclone Tasha that hit Australia in 2010 caused one of the most severe and deadly series of floods that the country has ever experienced in its modern history. Property damage from this terrifying tropical storm was estimated at more than 30 billion Australian dollars, while the human toll was most damaging, with a total of 35 dead and 9 missing. But to really realize the devastation caused by this terrible natural disaster, we invite you to watch this incredible footage, filmed quite by chance by a horrified witness. This poor cameraman must have had the fright of his life when he realized the gravity of the situation and the extreme velocity of this flash flood. As you can see on these really unusual pictures, a tumultuous torrent quickly submerged this small parking lot, carrying with it the numerous cars that were parked there. The furious fury of these powerful muddy waters will not have left any chance to the poor cars that it has carried away in its rage like vulgar twigs of wood. Only a big 4x4 will be saved by its reckless owner, who literally risked his life to rescue his precious vehicle. All the plumbers in the world will tell you that you should never play with a clogged water pipe, especially when it is more than 1 meter in diameter and carries tens of thousands of cubic meters of wastewater, because it would well be that this one explodes in your face. And believe me, the result would be too frightening to see. On this rather explosive sequence, you will see indeed that a sewer pipe can easily spoil your day if it is not so well maintained. On this small and quiet road of a rather charming Turkish village, the sewers have just been redone, and the repair work is still in progress on the surface. But it must be said that the workers of this construction site are not very good in terms of security, since they have carelessly left the passage open to vehicles and have not even put warning signs. But look at what will happen immediately after a car passes by. The underground pipe gave way under its own weight, causing the wastewater to rise like a powerful geyser hurtling towards the sky. The quiet little road was quickly transformed into a veritable torrent of muddy and foul water under the incredulous and terrified gaze of the poor, frightened motorist. Fortunately, the latter will have the good reflex to reverse in order to escape this aquatic explosion. Located between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans, Greenland is one of the world's last wildernesses, with vast, virtually unexplored lands and breathtakingly beautiful natural landscapes. Greenland is almost entirely covered by the ice cap, and its climate is extremely harsh throughout the year, with temperatures as low as -69.6 degrees Celsius. This giant island is therefore, to say the least, inhospitable and fierce. And the natives know that danger is never far away, and that they must always keep an open eye and a vigilant mind. In this unbelievable sequence, you can see a group of local fishermen peacefully going about their business, not suspecting that the sea in front of them would soon try to swallow them alive. Indeed, in a little less than a few seconds, a gigantic groundswell broke on the shore, narrowly missing to take the poor sailors with it. These last ones were thus very lucky to be able to get out of it safe and sound. What one cannot say of their boats carried away by this small tsunami. A dam is an engineering structure designed to store drinking water in very large quantities while managing to produce energy thanks to hydroelectric turbines. Most of the dams can contain and regulate millions of cubic meters of water, which is not an easy task when you know the erosion power of this natural element. And even if it is a rather rare event, fortunately, the fact remains that the rupture of a dam is always a catastrophe of great magnitude. On these terrible images, you can see the fateful moment of the collapse of the Brumadinho Dam in Brazil. This megastructure had been built in 1976 by the Brazilian mining group Vale, with the aim of serving as a retention reservoir for mining waste. But the obsolescence of this structure and the lack of control and security measures finally caused its rupture on January 25, 2019, in the early afternoon. So look at the power of the tumultuous floods that fell on the valley, destroying everything in their path. The toll of this disaster was actually very heavy, with more than 270 dead and missing people, not to mention the billions of dollars in property damage. You can even see several vehicles, including a freight train, vainly trying to escape the flood. but unfortunately, they will end up being caught by these millions of cubic meters of muddy water and waste. Let's now move on to a rather comical sequence featuring two young idiots in search of thrills, and the least we can say is that they will be damn well served. Admire these two retarded teenagers equipped with a selfie pole and a GoPro camera, and who decided to challenge the roaring power of the waves. They settled with their backs to the sea in the middle of the steep rocks, trying to immortalize this moment of pure adrenaline. But it seems that these two young people, ruined of the brain, forgot that the ocean is mortal and that it is not really very wise to defy this aqueous natural element, at the risk, of course, to finish in the guts of fishes. Invigorated by a few refreshing waves, our two companions in chronic neuron deficiency then lent themselves to the game, and all smiling, they decided to stay for a last photo. They were not happy about it, because as you can see, these first waves were only the first steps of a gigantic breaker which followed them very closely. This last one fell down on the rocks, taking with it our two happy idiots and roughing them up on the steep rocks. Like crabs stuck by the tide, these two poor creatures will try to cling to the rocks in order to not be swept away. Mont Saint-Michel is one of the most picturesque tourist destinations in France, and especially one of the most visited, with more than 2.5 million visitors each year. But with such an influx of tourists, tidal accidents are not uncommon, and many uninformed people get stuck during high tide. Because as the old popular saying goes, at Mont Saint-Michel the sea moves at the speed of a galloping horse. The fulgurating tide leaves very little margin of time indeed, and it is better to be in the height at the moment when the ocean regains its rights on the dry land. On this unusual sequence, you will see that in spite of all the security device set up at Mont Saint-Michel, there will always be tourists who will be fooled by this sudden and ultra-fast rise of water. Look at these airheaded cars who thought it was smart to park their cars in the middle of the bay in order to escape the crowded parking lots of this tourist place. But when the tide comes in and the water rushes in to engulf the bay, the cars parked there will soon be submerged. The police, who cannot break the windows of the cars, can only try to chain them so that the force of the tide cannot make them drift away. So unless you want to enjoy a thorough wash of your sedan or SUV, and then have to clean it of the thousands of mollusks that will not fail to take shelter there, be careful where you park when you visit Mont Saint-Michel. We continue this exciting aquatic video with a sequence that is anything but banal, and that may well freeze the blood in your veins. The scene takes place on the beach of Porceguen in Brittany, and as you can clearly see, the weather was far from being good. Indeed, a terrible storm was raging offshore, and its distant tumult reached the beach with great violence. However, despite the gray and threatening sky, as well as the huge waves that were hitting the shore, some tourists found it ingenious to venture on the beach, as close as possible to this completely raging northern sea. As you can see, indeed, an old retired couple, probably looking for some thrills to spice up their daily life, decided to push a little towards the sea, just to feel this adrenaline thrill. But the least we can say is that it was a bad idea on their part, because it only took one wave, a little more powerful than the others, to capsize them like the unfortunate shipwreck of the raft of the Medusa. Carried away by the waves, the poor grandpa is soon followed by the granny, who nevertheless has the merit of having tried to save her old husband. And believe me, this nice old couple literally came close to death, because without the intervention of this good Samaritan in a yellow vest, they were well on their way to drown in these cold and stormy waters. Another aquatic sequence, since it is the theme of our video of the day, and this time, believe me, we would need a very good plumber to repair the damage. Admire these brave workers conscientiously doing their hard work, trying as best as they can to fix a leak on a large drinking water pipe. A very nasty crack had indeed appeared, and it had to be quickly fixed, otherwise the situation would get even worse. But it must be said that this poor worker should have changed his wrench, because obviously the one he uses for this job is not really good enough. And in less time than it takes to say it, the water pipe exploded violently, leaving immeasurable quantities of water in the air. We continue with this hilarious sequence that comes from Pakistan, where torrential rains had plunged the Punjab region in a catastrophic flood in 2019. The images of the material damage and the unfortunate victims of this deluge are a spectacle to melt the most hardened hearts. But among all this desolation, you will witness a scene, at the very least comical and absurd, which will certainly not fail to leave you completely speechless. Look at this poor journalist, submerged up to his neck and who struggles stubbornly against the waves, while continuing his report in front of the camera as if nothing had happened. Here is a reporter who really takes his job seriously, and who is certainly not afraid to get his feet wet for a good cause. Now get ready for a rather stunning sequence. That's really the least we can say, as you will see right away. Look at this band of tourists happily gathered on the ledge, impatiently watching the big waves coming from the sea. But what were these poor people thinking, seeing this gigantic wave approaching them at high speed, and yet remaining on the spot like happy idiots? What had to happen finally happened, because as you can see, the huge wave, by crashing on the wall of the ledge, took all these people with it. And as always on your favorite YouTube channel, we have saved the best for last, with this incredible video of the Tiger Leap Gorge, a very picturesque canyon located on the Jinsa River in the People's Republic of China. This gorgeous river canyon is one of the deepest and most spectacular in the world, largely due to its powerful and tumultuous rapids. These images, which seem to come from another planet, show you the almost limitless power of the waves that pour down with a literally dizzying flow. Now tell us in the comments what you think of these amazing sequences, and tell us which of them impressed you the most. Don't forget to subscribe and click here to watch another of our videos.